Hello everybody and welcome to today's masterclass where I am going to be here and talking through everything that you need to know if your baby, toddler or child chokes. Now this is absolutely one of the biggest fears for me as a mother. So I understand if this is a fear for you, and I assure you that I'm going to give you the tools as you're all coming in. Say hello, let me know where you're watching from, maybe how old your baby is. The idea is this is an interactive class. You're able to ask questions as you're all coming in. As I said, it was one of the biggest fears for me as a mother. And I still, even though my children are a little bit older now, find it a big concern, particularly if they're running or eating or things like that. Hello, so wonderful to have you here. And I just have to say congratulations to you on being a proactive parent and taking this small amount of time out of your day. Hello from Wellington, this is awesome. We've got lots of New Zealand mums and dads coming and joining us, as well as all of our Australian mums and dads. As I said, good on you for being a proactive parent. Good on you for taking the time to learn these skills. It is absolutely critical. Hello, we've got Gold Coast, Auckland, Brisbane, lots of 7, 8, 6-month-old. This is just going to be wonderful for you. As I get into it and you're all coming in, I want to make sure that I use your time really well. So I will let you know exactly what the masterclass is going to entail, what we're going to cover. The first thing I want to say quickly though is that you don't need to be sitting and taking notes. Please know that this will be saved on my Instagram page so you can re-watch this as well. If you have a partner who's currently at work or a grandparent or a babysitter and you want to make sure that they sit down and watch this as well, it will be saved. For all of you who have registered for today's link and for today's masterclass, you will also be emailed a free guide to go on the fridge about step by step with photos of what I'm going to go through here today. So a free step-by-step guide with a little link to the video so that you can refresh your mind anytime. I think it's super important that you all get your hands on that. If you are jumping on here and you're like, I didn't register, sorry, that's absolutely fine. Just send me a DM after the masterclass and I will send you that downloadable so you can also print it off and stick it on the fridge. And finally, I need to let you know that I'm going to share with you all a discount code today that gets you $50 discount off our online baby and child first aid program. So if after watching this today, you think, I like this style, I like this way of learning, I like being able to sit on my couch and watch and rewatch, and you'd like to learn about more baby and child first aid, I'm going to share that link with you. And the last piece is that there is going to be time for Q&A at the end here. So if you have any questions, I have limited this masterclass to make sure that your your questions do get answered. So I will be doing that for you. Okay, so let's get into it. I won't be answering questions until I say at the end, everyone, just so that you know, because I'm, multitasking as is, and I can't be looking at the stream when I'm teaching. So there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end. But first and foremost, welcome. As I said, thank you for being proactive parents. My name is Edwina. I'm a registered midwife and I'm an emergency clinical nurse consultant, which just means I've done further study to work in the emergency department and obviously in the maternity unit. And the reason I am here today is I was talking with the incredible trainers at Baby Sensory and Toddler, and we just wanted to make sure that their community and their parents were 100% supported, because we know that looking after your babies and toddlers and looking after your children is one of the most important roles, and that choking is one of the most common reasons in Australia and New Zealand for 0 to 4 to be called, for a paramedic to be called. So for an ambulance to be called to someone's house, 0 to 4, it's one of the most common reasons. So we thought, right, well, how can we provide the most value is share with you what to do. So we're physically going to go through it. So quickly, while I'm doing the intro, grab a toy, grab a pillow, grab a cushion off the couch, something like that, so that when we do our practical session here today, you've got something to practice with. I'll be using Junior here, my little resus doll, but just a pillow or a toy or something will work just as well. So as I said, I'm a registered midwife and I'm an emergency nurse. And why this is so important to me is I had spent a couple of years teaching our baby and child our childbirth education classes, and a lot of the parents, after they had their babies, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, is you go through the pregnancy, you go through that, incredible time of birthing your baby and getting to know everything about your baby. And then it almost feels like you're a bit spat out of the hospital, or the midwife leaves after your birth. And you're sitting at home and all of a sudden you're in charge of this new little human being. And I had all these parents reaching out to me saying, childbirth education course was great with Birth Beat, but now what? What if they get a fever? What if they get a rash? What if something bites them? What if they get bumped on their head? And I thought, gosh, there really is this huge gap for parents around, are we giving you the tools not only for first aid, but to actually look after an unwell child, and how to know when to go to the emergency department, or how to know when to go to the pharmacist, or how to know when to just wait at home and let your baby have a sleep. And it's really hard to know that when you're a new parent. So as an emergency nurse, I had this idea bubbling away. And I will say it's a lot of work building a course like this, but I absolutely love that I've done it now. But I'm a little bit woohoo, and I truly believed that there was a calling for me to do this. And it was one evening, and I'm going to share a personal story, and this is the way I teach the online baby and child first aid course as well. I'm just going to get rid of my comments there so you can see me. This is the style that I teach in, is telling stories. Now, the stories that I tell, I have permission of the family to share these stories, and we share a lot of our stories on our BirthBeat Instagram page as well, because I think that's the way you will remember. When I tell you a story about a rash or a fever or a snake bite, that's when you'll remember. So that's how I teach my online first aid courses as well. But this story was really personal. I was late in my pregnancy with Theo, and Polly was about 2.5. They're my children, Polly and Theo. And I was working in the emergency department. And so I was quite heavily pregnant, and it was an evening shift. And if you've ever had to go into an emergency department or go to the triage window and speak to a nurse, you know that that can be quite stressful. If you've ever had to come in an ambulance to an emergency department, again, you know that's very stressful. However, when we're working in the emergency department, we don't know if an ambulance is going to be arriving unless they have a significant emergency on board, unless what is required is a mounted response. So plenty of staff, and we need to have a process in place to look after what's coming in. And it was actually on this evening when I was heavily pregnant with Theo. Polly was at home with her dad, and I got a phone call, and the emergency department has a phone call. It's called the bat phone. I don't know why we call it that, but we do. And the in-charge nurse carries the bat phone, and I was the in-charge nurse that evening, and I received the phone call, and it was paramedic co-ward. So all across Australia and New Zealand, we have a network of paramedics, and the co-ward lets the hospitals know if there's an emergency coming in. And I remember the phone call, and they said, hello, and it sounds like it's very brief and almost rude, but you've got to remember how time critical this job is. And the call said, hello, drowning, active resuscitation on 2-year-old, 3 minutes ETA. So to me, I said, thank you, we'll start preparing. And I hung up the phone. And what I next did was not correct procedure, and I own and acknowledge that. I picked up the phone straight away, and I dialed my husband's mobile. And he picked up the phone and he said, hi. And I knew because of his voice that there wasn't anything happening in our home, because I needed to know so that I could continue to do my job, that it wasn't going to be my daughter. Because it was about 5:36 in the evening. It was the time in our household that we're doing the bath time, we're doing dinner, we're preparing for bed. So I needed to know that this little 2-year-old that was coming in after drowning was not my child. So my husband, I hung up on my husband, and I remember later that night he said to me, what was with that phone call earlier? You just hung up on me. Whoa, burst into tears. But what happened that evening was this young girl came into our emergency department. She was naked, wet, and lifeless, and active resuscitation had been taking place with the paramedics. She came into our emergency department and we intubated her, which means we put her on a breathing machine. I'm really conscious that I will try and make sure that I don't use any language. And when I'm teaching my first aid classes, I make sure I use language that you can all understand so that it's really easy for you to be processing and learning this information. That's the most important thing. So we'd put her onto a breathing machine, and because I live in a smaller regional town, we don't have a large, what's called a PICU, a pediatric intensive care unit, or a NICU, which is a neonate intensive care unit. So this little girl was flown to a larger hospital. Now, her parents came in with her, and her father had been supervising this little girl. She was actually closer to 3 years of age in the bath that evening. It was a 3-way bathroom, and he'd quickly stepped out and gone to the toilet and then come back into the bathroom. But when he was sitting on the toilet, he noticed he couldn't hear her anymore. Now, this was a little girl that could confidently get out of a pool. So not that surprising that Dad was just, such a small amount of space away. But he was. And then he couldn't hear her. And he came back into the bathroom, and in the bath was vomit in the water, and this little girl was laying face down in the water. Thankfully, this father had done a baby and child first aid course. He quickly picked her up and started active resuscitation while calling out to his wife, who had a newborn at the time, to call 000. This is absolutely critical. This is important that you understand that he acted quickly and appropriately. Because of that active resuscitation, because he knew how to commence CPR on this little girl, there was no delay in oxygen getting to her brain. And therefore, there was no delay and there was no permanent damage to her brain. So every time I am teaching baby and child first aid, I want parents to know and to remember that the ultimate goal is not for you to fix or cure or diagnose your child. It is to make sure that you are keeping them safe, to make sure that you are letting oxygen get to their brain so that there is no permanent damage to your child's life and therefore your lives. And it was after this experience when this little girl came back to our hospital a couple of weeks later with what we call nil deficit, which is just a fancy way for saying she was not permanently in any way disabled from this experience, because her father knew what to do and acted quickly. And I really feel like that was the evening that I said, do you know what? We're going to add the baby and child first aid classes, and we're going to make sure it's our mission to have as many parents, not only in Australia and New Zealand, but the world, know what to do if their children stop breathing or if their children become unwell. And that is what keeps me motivated every day. And that is what has me here. And I keep touching that, sorry, because I keep making sure that I can see you all without all the feeds covering my page. So I'm going to get into the demonstration. What I want you to know as well is I'm going to be using Junior here, and you're all going to be going along with me. But first, in terms of our demonstration, if you've just joined us, don't worry, this is being recorded. Your free guide that I talked to you about, so you don't need to be writing down, is going to be emailed to you as well as the replay link. Can you all still see me? Okay, good. And it's important to know that we're also going to be sharing a $50 discount code to our full online program at the end of this video. If you aren't able to stay on, please know that you will also get the replay option, but we will be doing a live Q&A in a few minutes as well. I'm going to get straight into it. What I want to talk about here is just, I think for a lot of you, you have babies who are at the age of introducing solids. So today we're going to base this on introducing solids. But please remember that it's not only babies who are being introduced to solids that are going to choke. In fact, newborns can choke on breast milk, and often that's down to position. So we talk about that in our program. Toddlers put things in their mouth. Just the other day, my actual 7-year-old had a 20-cent piece in his mouth. And I said, mate, you cannot put money in your mouth, even with like how disgusting that is, and the money's been absolutely everywhere. So he spat out the 20-cent piece and he still had a $2 piece in his mouth. I was like, that is going to occlude your airway so quickly. But one of the big things we do see is food and the introduction of solids and baby-led weaning. And how you choose to do that in your family is absolutely up to you. We do have a guide around how to do that safely in our online program. And I think it's really important you arm yourself with those tools, either before you start introducing solids or very soon after. But today I'm going to talk about the difference between choking and gagging and understanding physiologically what is happening to your baby if they are choking and what you need to do quickly. Again, you don't need to be taking notes. You're going to get the free download. If you didn't register for this masterclass and you happen to have just stumbled across us, just send me a DM and I will send you that free download to stick onto your fridge so that you will remember the information that I'm sharing with you. Okay. In terms of high risk times, we know it's introduction of foods, but it's also if children are running and eating. Now, I am a mother of two, so I know how hard it is to say sit on your bottoms while you're eating, but it is super important. Plus, supervision is absolutely key around times when your children are eating. And if you have new babies or new little babies who are just all of a sudden on the move, I encourage you to crawl around the house yourself, see what drawers and spaces and cupboards you can open, and see what you can access. And just start to think, crawling around your house. I know that sounds a little bit weird. I'm getting you all to crawl around your house, but you will see what your toddler or your little baby is going to be seeing. Another thing that I've nursed a family with was actually choking on a balloon. Now, you don't think that that's something that necessarily a child's going to put into their mouth and choke with, but it can very easily occlude the airway. Another child who had, thankfully her parents had done the baby and child first aid course online with us. She had some building tape, so some of that blue sort of masking tape that's used when you're painting, and she'd put that into her mouth and it very quickly occluded the airway. So I just want to, before I start showing you what to do, is for you to understand what causes choking. So you and I and your child are air breathers. They went from being water breathers when they're inside of your tummy to air breathers. So it's absolutely critical that air passes through their nose and their mouth to fill their lungs. As their lungs fill, that oxygenation and that air that you are pulling in oxygenates the blood. The blood is pumped from the heart around the body, but most importantly to the brain. Without oxygen getting to the brain, we get the result of brain damage. And we don't want anyone to have that permanent disability. It is absolutely irreversible. I do believe we're going to learn more and more in this space, but currently there is a cure for so much, but there is not a cure for permanent lack of oxygen getting to your baby or child's brain. So everything that I'm teaching you today, that is my focus. Making sure that you act quickly and know what to do and you're doing it efficiently so that there's not a permanent disability for your family member. So we want to make sure that oxygen is getting to the lungs. If your child puts something in their mouth or if you feed something to your child, it can occlude that airway that takes the air from the nose and the mouth down into the lungs. If you block that, what we want to try and do is unblock it. So there's still going to be some air in the lungs, but the smaller they are, the smaller amount of time they have because the smaller the volume in the lungs. So I just want you to remember those little tips and sort of understand that basic science of how your baby is born. Now I'm going to go into the difference between choking and gagging, because the first thing is assessing the severity. So if you are introducing solids, and this is a nice little side tip, if your child is a gagger, and you know what I mean when they're kind of going, and they're making that sound and that awful look on their face, and it can be really stressful for you, particularly if it's the first time that they're doing it. What I want you to do is look at them and say, "Oh, you're so clever. Choo, choo, choo. Gosh, you're a clever person. You're such a clever baby. Your job is to put a big smile and be full of confidence," because what they're looking to you for is reassurance. They are learning to chew and masticate and use their tongue and teeth to put food down into their stomach. If you go and intervene, or you look worried, or you look terrified, you're going to share that fear with your child or baby. So it's really important that you help them and encourage them, but do it verbally. What I don't want you to do is go and go, "Oh, there you go, you're right," and pat them on the back. Do you want to know why I don't want you to do that? Because if they're trying to dislodge it themselves, so they're coughing and they're gagging, that means that they're able to actively try and do it themselves. So in terms of an effective or a non-effective cough, if it's effective, they're able to try and bring it up themselves. And if they're doing that and you go and pat their back, the first thing you do is take deep breath. And if there was something like a marble, a piece of popcorn, and that has occluded their airway, then it is super important that we clear that and let them clear that before they take a deep breath and suck it back down into their airway. So I want you just to sit and be present and absolutely, sorry, I've got some issues with my connection here. Are we still all good? I need to see a thumbs up if we can still hear and see me. The joys of doing things live, isn't it? Thankfully with our online course, it's all pre-recorded. Yep, we got a thumbs up. Thank you, Emma. Much appreciated. Thank you, Miss Mel. I was being really clever and turned my phone on to do not disturb. Shouldn't have done that because it keeps going to sleep. Thanks, guys. So in terms of encouraging them, I know it's really hard. So even as a new parent, sit on your hands when you're introducing solids, because gagging is developmentally appropriate. It's awesome. It's good for them to be learning how to do it. However, and in your guide, we're talking about effective and non-effective cough. If it is a non-effective cough, very quickly you're going to start to see changes in color. Now this gets very serious, we are talking about choking now. With choking, again, it's important that you act quickly and confidently. So in terms of assessing the severity, you're going to be looking at your child. Very quickly you'll start to see color change around their mouth and their nose. It may be silent, or they may have some sort of sound and some sort of cough, but it's not effective. And the reason you know it's not effective is there's going to start to be color change, which means the circulation is already being affected. Your child will still be conscious, looking at you, but you will quickly start to see color change. And if it is silent and you can't hear any air passing, you need to act quickly. Ideally, when you're introducing solids, your child should be in a high chair anyway. So picking them up, having a look at them, continuing to reassure them because they are still conscious. And what you're going to be doing is, if you can clearly see in their mouth something that you could easily pick out, or if it's a piece of spaghetti or something long and you can grab it and pull it out, by all means do. But what I don't want you to do is get a finger or get two fingers and be pushing around inside of their mouth, because you can push what is occluding their airway further into their airway, and we don't want that. That's going to be harder then. So if you can easily see it, pick it out. If you can't get it easily, or if there's vomit, turn them quickly. What I do, and this is based on a 3-month-old, what I do, and I think that this is very important for you all to understand, is I use the support of my arm, and you can all practice this. I'm going to go through the demonstration once and then we'll practice it together to make sure I provide a neutral airway. So if for an older child, you're going to have to be holding and maintaining their airway and keeping it in a nice straight line. For this age child, by putting them in that position, and I've practiced this a lot, obviously, so I want you all to practice it a few times after, I'm letting gravity work by letting the head go down, that position. I'm keeping their airway open, and I can be seeing if they can clear their airway when I start the back thrusts. So I'm going to be doing 5 back thrusts. And again, they're not slaps or hits, but they are going to be incredibly firm and very forceful. I know what I'm about to do now looks very confronting and like I'm hitting a baby or a child. Remember, this is life-saving first aid. So I'm going to use this part of my hand for this age of child as well, and between the shoulder blades. And what I'm trying to do is use the little bit of air that is left in their lungs to try and push whatever is occluding their airway out. So I'm using that part of my hand, I'm using gravity, and I'm going to do 5 back thrusts. You can do 5 back thrusts and then call for emergency services, or call for emergency services, put it on speaker, and then do the 5 back thrusts. Why I let you choose there is if you do 5 thrusts and you clear the airway, that's great. However, you've got to be really conscious of knowing that you still need to call for emergency services, because if you're not able to clear with the first 5, you want to know that an ambulance or a paramedic is on their way to your home to provide assistance. The beauty of calling emergency services is you can call that number, leave it on speaker, and continue to do what I'm teaching you. Scream out for help. If you're in a car, pull over, flag someone down. Just make sure that there is help and services coming to you. What I don't want you to do is spend 2 or 3 minutes doing what I'm teaching you now and then calling emergency services, because the delay is critical. Absolutely critical. Okay, so you've all got your position, gravity's working, you've got the butt of your hand in between the shoulder blades, and it's 5 firm thrusts. Again, watch me and then we'll practice together. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm checking to see if anything has come out of the mouth. Often the baby will have a big vomit or a cry. I'm not seeing anything move and I'm not seeing anything come out. So I'm going to go 4, 5. You wouldn't normally pause like that. I'm just pausing to let you know. Nothing has been cleared. What you'll be expecting to see, and it's harder with a darker skinned child, you're not going to see the color change as quickly, but lighter skinned children, very quickly you'll start to see color change around their nose and their mouth. I'm checking to see, I cannot easily clear, it is still well occluding the airway. I cannot see what the baby or toddler is choking on. So again, I'm now keeping that nice neutral plane. I'm checking that their chin is supported, and I'm using gravity and in between the nipple line. And again, with this age, which is about approximately a 3-month-old, I'd either be using 2 fingers like this, thrusting. For a larger child, again, I'd be using that part of my hand that I use for the back. And I know this looks aggressive, but this is life-saving first aid. Supporting the head in between the nipple line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can see what I'm doing here is slower than what I teach in CPR. And it is not a push, it is a thrust, because we are trying to take the air that is currently in their lungs and push what is ever occluding their airway out. So I've done 5 and 5 and I'm not seeing any response. Now I want to pause and get you to grab your pillow or your soft toy or something that you grabbed at the beginning of this class. Grab that, and now you're going to practice with me. So we're getting our phones and we're calling emergency services. If you're in Australia, you're calling 000. The first thing that they are going to ask you is what is your closest, actually the first thing they're going to ask you is police, fire or ambulance. You'll be requesting ambulance. If you're in some sort of emergency situation that involves like a car and fire and things like that, you actually can't say all 3. So just say one of them. Their job is to work out what other services they will send. But in this situation, we're wanting an ambulance. Put it on speaker, continue to talk to them, and they will be able to help coach you and will be asking questions. But it's time to take action quickly. So again, using the butt of my hand in between the shoulder lines, aligning the baby's airway, making sure that their chin is in a well-supported position, spine's well positioned, head's down. So I'm using gravity, and I'm going to go 5, and I want you to do it with me. Jump up, stand up. Don't be doing this sitting on a couch. And remember, this is the age probably for about a 3 to 6 month old, depending on the size of your baby. As your child gets larger, you can be putting them over your leg like so. Again, creating that position where gravity and support is working, but it's a little bit trickier to check if you're clearing their airway once they're over their knee. You might want to sit down to be doing that one. But for this age, this is a really great position to practice. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have not seen anything clear out of the airway. What we're going to be seeing is significant color change. We're continuing to reassure our child. They're conscious. We're saying, it's okay, darling, it's okay. Mummy's here and mummy's helping you. 2 fingers, 4 fingers, or the butt of your hand. And we're going again, practice with me. Practice means that you will remember. It embeds in your neural pathways. Please don't just watch. Get up and practice with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're still on the phone to emergency services and they are on their way to your home. Let's now say that we've cleared the airway. Bub's going to have a big vomit, a big cry, provide lots of reassurance, pop them up over your shoulder. They're going to want to be comforted. Continue to look at their color and assess them, and it's important you know how to do that assessment, and that's what I teach in our online course. Now, if you have not been able to clear the airway, Now is the time to lay your child on a flat surface, and it's absolutely critical that it's a flat surface. I teach you that when I'm teaching you the CPR. And you know that if your child is unresponsive and unconscious, you're seeing significant color change and they are not breathing effectively, it is now time to start CPR. And this is why it ties back to the beginning story, is that it's absolutely critical that every parent, every carer, every grandparent, every aunt or uncle knows how to do baby and child CPR quickly and efficiently. Now that's about an hour in our online course, so I'm not going to be teaching that right now, but I hugely hope that that has been helpful for you to understand how to introduce a bit more about solids safely. What's the difference between gagging and choking? And if your baby or toddler is choking, what to do about it? I will just quickly, and again, in terms of the code for everybody who's here for the masterclass, come to our online course. It is birthbeat.com. I will put a link up in stories after, but I want to let you know quickly that your code is BSTS50, Baby Sensory Toddler Sense. So BSTS50. You pop that in the checkout and you'll get a $50 off our course. Now this is limited to the first 100 that come and register with us, or for 48 hours, whichever goes first. So please, absolutely, and even if you join at a later date and don't have the $50 discount, that's not a big deal. But what is absolutely critical to me is that you spend $150 to have 12 months access to know how to manage all the emergencies for your baby or toddler, or if your baby or toddler even has gastro or diarrhea or has a fever or gets bitten by something or has a rash. It's not just about having the CPR and the choking and the drowning and the burns skills, which are absolutely critical first aid skills, but it's about how to look after just an unwell child. So it's BSTS50, and that will give you $50 off. As I said, it's the first 100 of the baby sensory community that joins, or 48 hours, whichever runs out first. But I wanted to make sure that I give that generous $50 discount to as many of you as possible. I will put the link up in the story as well. I just wanted to quickly, before you start asking questions, so anybody can start putting any questions in there that they want me to answer, is about an older child. So again, it's about sitting and putting the older child over your knee. However, you're not going to be able to do a chest thrust like I showed you on the baby. So actually to lay the child flat on the ground, and you would be doing the chest compression like I teach in the baby and child CPR. I think that's just important that we put that in there for any of our parents that have the older children, so that you know how to do that. And again, we follow that in more detail in the baby and child first aid course, which actually goes from 0 to 8 years of age. Now, if you have stumbled across today's masterclass and you didn't register online, that is absolutely fine. If you want our free download and you want that to stick, I put that upside down, sorry. If you want that to stick on your fridge because it is such a good guide, it is absolutely critical that you just send me a DM and I'll send you the link. All right, sorry, let me get into some of these questions. Does the chest thrust go under the ribs? Really, physiologically, we're sort of saying it's the sternum. But again, I find people go, oh, what's the sternum? So just between the nipple line, Abby, is the best way to think of it. Maybe not be thinking about my nipples, I've breastfed 2 babies. But between your baby or toddler's nipple line is the 2 fingers for this age. And again, for this age, it's more of a thrust. So we're doing that thrust position. For an older child who you're going to be laying on a flat surface, it is going to be more of a compression to try and push what little bit of air is in the child's lungs up to try and pass whatever is occluding the airway. Yeah, sorry. Often a question I get, and I haven't seen it here yet, but people say, what if you push it into the lungs? Again, it can be surgically removed. We can monitor your child in the hospital for that. Again, it's not a reason to hesitate responding, because we need to make sure that we're getting oxygen essentially into the lungs, so oxygen's getting to the brain. I also have people sort of say, oh, what if we hurt or break their ribs or bruise their back? Again, all of those things will heal, or there's things that we can fix in the hospital. Oxygen not getting to your baby or toddler's brain is not something that we can fix. Sarah says, at what exact point in the back or chest do you thrust? So shoulder blades. So look at and I know this is weird, but have a look at your baby or your toddler and have a look at where you would be doing it and think about it so that if it does happen in an emergency, you're not hesitating in between the shoulder blades. So have a look at your baby or toddler, pull up their shirt and have a look and mark that spot in your mind mentally on the front in between the nipples. Evelyn says, what age do you consider an older child? I.e., when do you need to lay them flat and do chest compression instead of blows over the knee? Evelyn, we don't say an age, we say usually on a weight. So I can hold a baby like that comfortably. I don't have a lot of upper body strength, but I can do it comfortably. However, if it was a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, I'm not going to be able to hold them up like that. So that would be the time. So it's about what you can hold and support in terms of your strength and the size of your baby or child. I hope that is helpful. 7-month-old, fingers or palm. Again, depends on the size of your 7-month-old because, again, I was doing 2 fingers and I actually found that probably wasn't getting enough force, so I went to 4 fingers. So again, depends on the size. How many sets of thrusts before changing to CPR? You continue to do 5 and 5, 5 and 5. Keep going until your child either clears their airway or becomes unconscious and then you start CPR or paramedics arrive and take over for you. So you can keep going 5, 5, 5, 5 for 5 or 10 minutes even if they remain conscious. So they're getting some sort of air and oxygen to them. If they lose consciousness, not responding, you need to start your doctor's A, B, C, D and going through CPR. How do you get the item blocking the airway to go down into the lungs if you can't get it up? You can't control that. You don't know that you'll be able to do that. But often, if you're not able to clear it by doing the thrusts, they're going to lose consciousness. And when you start CPR, blowing positive air into their mouth and nose can force it into the lungs. But again, it's not something that you can control. It's sort of like a byproduct of doing CPR. That's a great question. If your baby is coughing, would you encourage them to drink water or not? No, actually, it's just the general guide. It's very hard to get them to drink water if they're trying to bring something up themselves and it can complicate it. Just encourage them to keep coughing. You're so clever. Up you bring. Oh, you're doing such good eating with a big positive mouth, not patting them on the back. Can you put a baby on the back first to try to clear the airways? Sometimes it's hard to unbuckle them from the high chair first. Look, Abby, I think instinctively a lot of people do that. But if you've got a baby sitting, your baby is going to quickly suck back in. So taking the time to unbuckle them from the high chair and have them in this position to start to effectively thrust their back, you are much more likely that it's going to be projected out as opposed to if they're sitting in their high chair, you dislodge it, the risk that they're going to suck it back into their mouth is much higher. So I don't want you to do that. I want you to learn how to do it properly like this, follow our guide and practice and know how to do it, because just patting them on the back, yes, it might work, yes, it might dislodge it, but they're still sitting in their chair and they could suck it back in and be much further down their airway, and then you're having to go through this whole process anyway. Evelyn said, what do you mean by color change on the face? Would it turn pale blue? When your baby was born, Evelyn, and depends whether you had a Caesar or a vaginal birth, do you remember that they came out and they looked bluey tinged around the lips and the nose? Some babies look more blue than others. Well, it will be the same sort of thing. Very quickly you'll see around the lips and the nose, sometimes around the ears and the eyes, the nail beds, they will go a bluey whitish tone. That's what I mean by color change. Yes, this is a good question. My newborn often changes color around the mouth and seems to stop breathing when crying hysterically. What should I do? Again, that's not choking. And again, that's sort of more closely related to gagging or what we call breath holding. And it's still very frightening for parents. Just providing them with lots of insurance, holding them upright on you so that you're keeping their airway nice and clear. And thankfully, Rendeep, it is something that they will often grow out of. Guys, I realise I have gone about 10 minutes over time and you are busy mums and dads. As I said, this will be saved. Our code is BSTS50. It is going to go to the first 100 families that sign up to learn these skills. It's over 3 hours of videos. They're all in short, sharp little modules that you can watch, and you've got 12 months access to watch and rewatch them as many times as you can. So I hope this is education that I'm going to teach you that you never have to use, but it is absolutely critical that you make the investment into you and your family to learn these skills, so that if you ever do have to use them, you're not the family coming into me in the emergency department saying, you know, we're sorry, we just didn't know what to do, or panicked and not acting in a timely way, and there being a permanent disability. Thank you. So many lovely thank yous and love hearts. You guys rock. People saying, didn't know about the thrusts. Glad I watched. Thank you. Very informative. Thank you. Oh, my absolute pleasure. I love educating parents. Share this far and wide. Please let parents know how important it is to have these skills. If you're thinking about buying something for the grandparents or anybody who cares for your baby at Christmas time, you can also be getting them access or getting a gift voucher. Just send me a DM, and if you didn't register today and you would like our free downloadable, send me a DM. If you did register, you will be sent the link to the replay and all the freebies. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, and I will talk to you all soon.